I've always been interested in aviation, really, right from my earliest memories. Both of my grandparents, my grandfathers were in the Royal Air Force, and my dad was in the military, and so we grew up with a large military sort of family. But aeroplanes, we were lucky enough to live in an area of Worcestershire where there was a low-flying sort of radar testing facility, and that meant that we got all manner of fast jets, cargo aircraft, helicopters from all different nations buzzing the house at like rooftop level. And I used to remember running out into the garden and just watching them go, and I loved it, and I just thought, that is what I want to do, that's for me. And I just developed it on from there. There's something about flight that just captivates me, and I never get bored of it. I always just seem to love it, and as I learn new stuff, it just develops.
I think once you get the bug, it sticks forever, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you didn't actually go into aviation, you went to the Marines. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, it's a funny one, really. I always had the ambition to go and do fast jet flying, but I wasn't the biggest child at school, and I got in with a group of friends from my villages, and I suppose you know, a young or teenage testosterone kicked in, and my dad being in the Navy, we must have been on a school bus talking about the Marines, and I said, well, I reckon that could be quite good, I'd have a go at that. And they said, you'd never be able to do it, you're far too small. And so for me, that was like red rag to a bull. That's the challenge then, isn't there? So that's what I ended up going to do. And aviation sort of came back into my life after my life-changing injury. I was in a car crash and was paralysed, and aviation came back into my life as, for me personally, a means of rehabilitation. I first discovered that I could fly probably about 10 months after my accident. Obviously, it's quite a long road to recovery, and I needed something to do for my own mental well-being and my life. You have to find work, because in my opinion, that creates a sort of financial stability. It creates the foundations for which to be able to build a family on, but it also gives you distraction from some of the nastier things in life. And funnily enough, my dad was a resettlement officer for the military.
Okay.
And one of the techniques that he said was flick through a yellow pages and have a look at what vocations stick, and there was nothing. And then one day I thought, I remember Douglas Bader from the Second World War, of course the legless ace and hero of the Battle of Britain, and I thought, well, if he could fly without any legs in the war, I'm sure I can do it now in the 21st century. So I started doing a couple of search engine inquiries and found out about Airability, who were then the British Disabled Flying Association. And I wrote them an email just saying, hi, look, I'm paralysed, you know, I'd love to sort of see if I can get involved with flying with the ambition of going commercial. Is there anything you can do? They got back in touch really enthusiastically and were like, yeah, absolutely, come on down. And I went for my first trial lesson, and they said, literally, sky's the limit. And so that's how it all began. And my correspondence with the CAA, the Civil Aviation Authority, were equally as optimistic. I thought with them I'd come up against a bit of a bureaucratic shield, but it wasn't the case at all. Both medical and engineering were always of the opinion, and still are to this day, prove that you can do it safely, and we have absolutely no reason to say that you can't do it. And so I found that the door was wide open, and ever since then I've been flying nearly a decade now, and I've never looked back. It's just brilliant.
Yeah. So how did you start your training? Did you find it difficult, or were you a natural?
How do you say I think I was a natural without being an absolute shite? I think the training for me personally, I got on very well with, because I had the time and the resources, having just left the military, to be able to plow all of my energy into it. And so the training I found challenging, because of course for when anybody's learning to fly, it's challenging. Both the skills phase of learning to handle an aeroplane, your jar of capacity mentally is always maxed out and overflowing, but that's only how we progress. And then of course mentally with the exams as well, you're always having to study the books and learn quite a lot of new material, so it's always challenging. But I think that when you have got so much enthusiasm for something,
it takes over, doesn't it?
You make it work. It just takes over, and I enjoyed it. It was tough, but I enjoyed it. So I did all my training on a PA-28,
okay.
A Warrior. Yeah, I still remember the first registration that I soloed was Golf Bravo Golf Bravo Romeo Foxtrot Mike. And then the first aircraft, the aircraft I passed my skills test in was Golf Bravo Sierra Yankee Yankee.
Wow. So where would you fly from? Are you based here?
Yeah, so I'm based here at Bidford. We're a gliding site predominantly. We've got about 130 members, and there are powered aircraft, probably got about 30 powered aircraft. Well, no, have we got 30? No, I'd say probably about 20 powered aircraft here. And some gliding sites and power sites, and the integration between the two isn't always the best kind of union, but here at Bidford I think that power and gliding operations, you know, they come together quite nicely and everybody seems to get on. It's a lovely place to be. We're out in the Cotswolds, we have very little restricted airspace around us here, so world's your oyster. So my work with Channel 4 really as a professional broadcaster began back in 2010. I'd had the accident, I was on my road to recovery, I was learning to fly with the ambition of going commercial at the time, and I needed money, I needed a job. The flying wasn't paying for itself, and my friend noticed an article in a newspaper, and the article highlighted this search that Channel 4 were doing in the build-up to their coverage of the London 2012 Paralympic Games, and they made a bold claim to air 50% of their on-screen personalities with disabilities. And my friend cut out the article and he put a footnote on the bottom of it that said, "Arthur, put in for this because you're not bad looking and you're a gobshite." And I just thought that was flipping hilarious. So I made a couple of inquiries directly to the channel, and then a long story short, they put me on a contract to present the London 2012 Paralympics, which we won a BAFTA for. I think we grossed out about 7.6 million viewers at peak.
Wow.
And God knows how many we influenced worldwide. It would have been billions, and that really started off my career as a broadcaster. And after that, at a Christmas party, I was at the bar with one of the commissioning editors for specialist factual departments, and he knew about my flying and he knew about my military background, and so we wanted to desperately get some documentary stuff put together because I love the history, I love aviation, I love the military, and I wanted to do this. So he just asked me outright what your favourite aeroplane was. I said the de Havilland Mosquito. He had no idea what that was, and so then I think I spent the next half an hour singing the praises of this wooden wonder, and he fell in love with it so much that he commissioned it right there and then. And that's how my career sort of didn't go, or it went from, or it grew from Paralympic sport into aviation and military history. And now as a broadcaster I still pursue Paralympic side of things. So I've done 4 Paralympic games now, both winter and summer, and I've done multiple series on Channel 4 about aviation and military history stuff. So
I mean, that must have been pretty special. Your love of aviation became your job.
Well,
but can you talk us through the Mosquito for any viewers that don't know, which they will, but can you talk us through what kind of aircraft it was?
Oh, so the wooden wonder, the Havilland Mosquito, it was developed during the Second World War as a fast light bomber, when Geoffrey de Havilland first developed it, he developed it against the kind of trends of the Air Ministry. Everybody who was submitting proposals for bombers were covered with machine guns, armour plate and stuff like that in order to defend themselves, and they were slow, laborious, you know, lumbering old things. The de Havilland Mosquito and Geoffrey de Havilland, Sir Geoffrey de Havilland, came up with the idea that we want to create something light and fast, and if you do that you won't have to put guns on it because it will be able to outrun any of the aircraft that are trying to shoot it down. And it did very successfully, although you know, the aircraft spoke for itself in terms of its performance, but I think early skeptics were citing that it just wouldn't be a very successful bomber. And the Mosquito film that I made kind of told the story of really the versatility of the de Havilland Mosquito, because when it was originally conceived, it was conceived as a light bomber, but it soon proved proved itself as with its pinpoint accuracy, its low-level capabilities, and also the sheer versatility of what you could do with the aircraft. I mean, it was used by Coastal Command on anti-shipping raids. It was used by the Pathfinder squadrons to try and bring some accuracy to our area bombing campaign. It was used for super specialist pinpoint raids on, you know, Gestapo headquarters and archives and things like this. Of course, we all know about the Amiens raid and things, and that's just to name but a few. You know, off the top of my head, I couldn't name all of the raids that the Mosquito was involved in. And of course, it wasn't just the European theatre that it was involved in either. It was taken over to the Pacific as well, and Burma and areas like that. So this aircraft, as well as being my personal favourite aeroplane, we found was many people's favourite aeroplane, and making a documentary about it was just the perfect thing to do, and it went down really well, and loads of people appreciated it, and it was just great.
And you were lucky enough to have a trip, weren't you? What was it like?
Yeah, we were lucky enough to have a trip. We were hoping that we'd be able to go over to the States and fly in back then the newly airworthy KA-114, the only airworthy Mosquito since we lost the one at Barton all those years ago, and we knew that filming the actual Mosquito that could fly would form quite a big part of our documentary, and we were cheeky enough to try to hope that we might get a flight, and we did, and it had only been put together and signed off, I think, that week, and we went up, and there was an air show that weekend, and our film crew arrived on the Thursday, and then on the Friday, Mike Spaulding, the pilot, was like, I'm going to take it out, stretch its legs, just make sure that it's all right for the air show. Does anybody want to come along? And he offered it to the director first. The director kept it stum from me for purposes of making good television, and I'll explain in just a second why. And then Mike Spaulding, the owner, was like, yeah, sure, take him flying. And the insurance company were like, yeah, sure, if the pilot's happy and the owner's happy, then go flying and stuff. And then with all of this, the director then came up to me whilst we were on camera, and he was like, Arthur, you're going flying in the Mosquito this afternoon. And I was like, what? And of course then, you know, there was that piece to camera where I was just a little bit like, but and that's how we managed to go, you know, within an hour of being told that we were going up in the Mosquito. We had a cup of tea, got into the aeroplane, woof, off we went, and my God, what a machine it is. It's just phenomenal. Tail dragger aeroplane, the same as the Cub here. But you've got two massive Merlin engines, you know, producing something in the region of 2,400 horsepower, I think, Merlin 25s, 1,200 each, and because it's unlike single engine tailwheel aeroplanes where you, like say the Spitfire, where you've got a big long engine out the front you can't see, so we have to weave. I even have to weave in this. But with the Mars, because you've got them both out on the side and you've got the fighter windscreen, you have unhindered visibility of the airfield and taxiways in front of you, so you can taxi this thing straight. And we were holding on the brakes on this little grass strip, and we revved up the power like 2/3 power or something, and then off the brakes went, and woof, we went like a flipping rocket. It felt like jet power, and the tail comes off almost instantaneously, and then that view in front is just like it's just incredible. For anybody that knows how restrictive the views are in front of you, it's just amazing. And we went up, whoom, there we are, cruising over Virginia Beach at like, what, 240 miles an hour, and we're just cutting through turbulence. It was quite a thermal, windy day, so the Cub would have been buffeted around like mad, but this thing, just like a warm knife through butter, just cut through the lot. And I remember we did this one particular shot with a helicopter, and he was hovering here and he was getting us coming towards him, so the helicopter's up here and we're going there, and we just went underneath and we just hit like a speed bump as we went over his downwash, and that was the only turbulence we felt all day. And it's just a joy. Just a machine. Yeah, I know. I'm surprised that my nose isn't out of place now, having flown the Mosquito. That's all I got when I got home. They were like, "You're the guy that flew the Mars," and I'm like, "Yeah, man."
Very lucky man. So what did you go on to film after this?
So with the success of the Mosquito film, we got some fantastic viewing figures like that from that, and More 4 and other Channel 4 platforms still show the film to this day. I mean, New Zealand bought it, Australia bought it, Canada bought it, the States bought the film, and loads of other places. So it was a real hit. And then off the back of that, the channel were like, right, have a series, you know, which is unheard of. Normally you have to come up with a really, really good idea for a series before the channel commission it, but they were like, just make a series, work with this production company, which was the same production company we did the Mosquito film with, and they were like, come up with a great idea for a 3-part aviation related series, and yeah, go nuts. So we came up with Flying to the Ends of the Earth, which was myself going to the corners of the planet and flying with loads of different pilots in loads of different aircraft types, and telling the stories about how life is possible at the ends of the earth, with aviation being the conduit. So all of these people wouldn't be able to exist here if it wasn't for aeroplanes supporting them. So for example, the missionary pilots in Papua New Guinea who fly out into the mountains. You've got people in Siberia who require helicopters and turboprop aircraft to be able to supply things. You've got the floating city of Iquitos, which is cut off by road. You can only access it by waterways and aviation. And so you find that all of these places, though they are a world apart from each other, all have that common link, which is flying. And we did 2 series of that, did 2 3-part series. The first one aired in 2014 and was recommissioned, and then we did one in 2016, and unfortunately had a helicopter crash in Russia, which kind of kind of scared the channel a bit, understandably, I think, and so that kind of was the end of that. But nevertheless, a year later, we wanted another series, so we said, right, let's keep it to Britain. Let's fly around, UK airspace and tell the stories of Britain from the air. And that's how Flying Across Britain with me came about. And doing it in the Cub is obviously a perfect platform for doing that, because being a high-wing aeroplane that flies low and slow, you can enjoy these green and pleasant lands for all that they are.
So before we get into your latest series, tell us a bit about how you acquired the Cub and what it's like to fly.
The Cub's a stunning aeroplane to fly. I think you speak to anybody that's ever flown a Cub, or anybody who knows anything about aviation, they will always tell you that the Cub is a fantastic aeroplane. There's a saying that it's only just fast enough to kill you. But she's just so forgiving. I mean, bless her, she's got me out of trouble a couple of times for my shortcomings, and she'll never let you down. She's just fantastic. She flies so well. She's so easy to fly. She's a joy. She's just an absolute joy to handle. And I first acquired her in 2012 from a lady who was based down by Swindon, and then I started converting it with hand controls, because obviously I can't use my legs, so the rudder has to be modified. And the way in which we've done this, and she's a one of a kind, there aren't any of us in the world that I'm aware of that have the same modification. So to compensate for the lack of use of my legs, I have a hand tiller on the left hand side, forward for right rudder, back for left. But because it's a tail dragger and you need simultaneous throttle power and rudder inputs, I have an unsprung motorcycle twist grip on the top, so I can push and twist it all at the same time, and it's much like rubbing your stomach and patting your head, but once you got used to it, it's no problem, it's fine.
Brilliant. So let's talk about your new series. How did the idea come up, and when did you start filming?
The idea with television and media and things like that, the best ideas are often the most obvious ones, the most simple ones. And we were there and we were kind of scratching around and thinking, what's going to be a real hit? What can we do? What have we got? And of course, right, we've got a pilot, we've got Arthur, we've got the Cub, so we've got an aeroplane, and we've got a beautiful country. And when you put all those things together, you kind of think, wow, all right, well, it's flying across Britain with Arthur Williams, you know, and that's kind of where we started. We also then developed the kind of pitch, if you like, document, an idea, and the mission statement of the series really was to be that so many people live near or pass airfields on their way to work or visit relatives or whatever, even if they don't know, because they may be old disused airfields or runways, that there is a huge appeal not just to the aviation fraternity or following, but to people who have a local interest. And so we decided that we would focus on the airfields of Britain and tell the stories of the diversity of general aviation, and the beauty of the British countryside would fall into place as we transited over the top of all of these. So we kind of gathered everything today as a bit of a love song for the series of Britain from the air, and the airfields that we all love so much and pass on most of our lives.
Yeah, and there's 4 parts, so does each episode have a theme?
Yeah, so each episode of the series broadly follows a different region of Britain, and we don't cover all of them, unfortunately, because we don't have the time, unfortunately. But episode 1 focused on the southwest, so we were in sort of our neck of the woods here, the Cotswolds, extending down to sort of Hampshire, Dorset, Somerset, and that area. Episode 2 was the southeast and the London episode, so we were Kent, Biggin Hill, Bedfordshire. Yeah, those were the main counties for that one. And then episode 3 is Scotland, so we go up to the west coast of Scotland on the furthest that I've ever been in the Cub, which was a logistical challenge, but one that I thrived on and loved, and we made it successfully. And God bless them, we're all in one piece, and the views from up there, the rewards, are just out of this world. And you'll see, you know, when with the beautiful bright yellow backdrop, just to the bright blue Atlantic and the blue skies, unbelievable. And then for the 4th and final episode of the series, we focus on the bomber counties. So we go to Suffolk, Lincolnshire and Norfolk, and we tell a bit of a story about my own personal family heritage that me and my brother go to find out and learn about for the first time, which is awesome. We go flying with first female Red Arrow pilot, Kirsty Murphy, with the blades, and she does her best to pull my face off and make me sick, but she doesn't succeed. I love it. And we go to RAF Lakenheath, and we look at the phenomenal F-15 Strike Eagles and the squadrons that they got based there. I get the opportunity to do a low pass and go around in an old Second World War American military airplane, and all the Americans on camp were just waving out the control tower and absolutely loving it. So that's really, really cool. And we look at Just Jane, and there's loads going on in Bomber County, as everybody knows. Yeah. And I mean, if you're a particular interest in Second World War history, then that's the episode for you. You'll love that. Oh, the planning for the series was in depth, to say the least. I think before we even got off to the ground or met for the first day of filming, we had to do loads and loads of planning, both on a production point of view, but also on operating the aeroplane. Our first point of call really was with the Civil Aviation Authority and confirming with them the legalities of what exactly it was that we were wanting to do, and they were perfectly happy right at the highest level. And as soon as we got the green light from them to go ahead and do what we wanted to do, then we started working with insurance companies. We started then trying to plan the logistics of it all, because of course an aeroplane that can't really deal with much more than a 10-mile-an-hour crosswind is going to need quite a lot of contingency built into the filming schedule. And that gets very hard when you're planning your days around other people's diaries, like our contributors who may only be able to, take the CEO of RAF Lakenheath, for example. He's an incredibly busy man, and we only have a small window to be able to interview him. And if I can't get to the airbase because of the aircraft's limitations on that morning, then we've got a pickle. So we had to consider all of these things before we started filming. And once we'd got all of our ducks in a row and all the green lights were there, we started the filming. And really, the filming, I don't know whether I want to say that was the easy part, but it was certainly the most enjoyable, that's for sure. But it was we knew that we were really making progress when we started filming, because the bureaucracy and planning it can be laborious and quite hard work sometimes.
Imagine, yeah. So this might be difficult for you, but did you have a favourite episode? Do you have a favourite episode and a favourite airfield you flew into?
Oh man,
Pushing you there.
Okay. My favourite episode is the Spitfire episode, I think. It's the Spitfire episode, just because it's the Spitfire, you know? And I mean, I watch it back and I look at my enthusiasm and I think, oh, blooming heck. You know I presented it, I know I'm the man that's there, but I'm having a really good time watching me having a good time, if that makes any sense. And all of the comments that I got back from that were just like how people were in tears at home watching it, because they could just share through myself their passion of aviation. And what I love about doing these documentaries and aviation related work is that it's all right to be an absolute geek. You know, if you flipping love something, then that's completely cool, just to go nuts and never hold yourself back with that. And I love that. I think the final episode where we're in the Eastern Counties and finding out that personal piece of family history that was real whoa moment was immense. And me and my brother particularly will remember that for the rest of our days. And that's really lovely. And having privileged access to, you know, frontline fighter jet bases, and also with the RAF as well, I found that a real privilege. So that's cool. Favorite airfield to visit? Has to be, for me, I think Mull Glenforsa.
Okay.
Yeah, up on the west coast of Scotland. It's a beautiful little strip, perfect, smooth little grass runway. They love the vintage kind of glamour of early aviation during the 20s, 30s and stuff. They've got this beautiful hotel which is next to the strip, and you go up there and Brendan and his wife are waiting for you with like a pint in hand and a really nice burger, and you're like, oh,
this is a life.
Yeah, and it is an operating base for some of the best flying you'll do in Britain. Flying around the Highlands and around the coast and islands, it just takes your breath away. And for anybody who's lucky enough to fly who is watching this, I really thoroughly recommend you go there. It's a bit of a slog to get up to it, and the reason that it was one of my favourite airfields also was because it was the furthest that I'd been out. It was a real achievement for me to get the Cub up there. Obviously the weather at that part of the country is really extreme sometimes, so being able to get a little flimsy Cub up there was a real yes moment. So that was cool. But for anybody that has the opportunity to get up there, thoroughly recommend it, because you've just got access then to some nature and geography that will blow your mind from the air.
Sounds amazing, yeah. What also I love about the series and yourself is that you can see the passion on your face. I mean, there's other documentaries, you know, and they're not really into it, but with you can really see the passion, I think.
You know, this is what I do on my weekends. I'm a through and through aviation enthusiast. I'm a hashtag avgeek, and I'm not ashamed of it at all. This is absolutely what I love, you know. This is where I spend my money. I've bought my own aeroplane, and I spend my weekends when I can, when I'm not having to be ordered to clean the house or do laundry or the dishes. This is where I come to the airfield, I take the airplane and I go off and we go flying and we go pottering. And if you have a look at my logbook, half the entries in it over the last 2 years have been taking friends and family flying, because I want to share with them the thrill that I get out of flying this thing, you know. And you make many people's days, months, years. I recently took my auntie flying, who's just been you know, she's just coming out a bad time with cancer, and she was on her bucket list to go flying in a light aeroplane. We took her up, we had a barbecue and then drank ourselves silly in the bar, and we just had the best time, you know. And the enthusiasm comes through, because this is just what I love. It always has been and always will be. And you know, if I'm not doing anything, I'd sell my house before I sold the aeroplane.
And I think anyone that does go flying and they're not interested, as soon as they're up, they love it, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the amount of people that get bitten by the bug is just insane.
It is.
We are privileged to be able to do what we do, but I say this to everybody: if you love something enough, or if you're enthusiastic enough, or as willing and as determined enough, you will make it happen. Everybody will, no matter what background they come from, what circumstances they live in. I mean, the amount of pilots that I've interviewed myself and spoken to, I mean, the first guy that comes to mind is Lola Ojujurin, who's the first black pilot, African black pilot to fly solo around the world in a single engine aeroplane.
Incredible feat.
You know, he's a 737 captain flying for a major carrier out of Stansted. You know, he was born in Africa. He was brought up in a high-rise council property in London. He's 737 captain flying around the world. So anybody can do it. If you're willing, anybody can do it. And for those that do have the drive to do it, I thoroughly recommend that you do, because once you get aloft, I mean, gosh, you know, the sky's the limit, and you're amongst the lap of the gods, and there's nothing for me that parallels it.
So Arthur, what can we see from you in the future?
So I do quite a lot of work with Embraer, the Brazilian aircraft manufacturer. I've been working with them since the Paris Air Show last year, helping them market their new E2 generation of commercial jets. So they're sending me off to the States next week, which I'm thoroughly looking forward to. On the distant horizon, we've got the Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games, which I'm thoroughly looking forward to as well. And between now and then, I'm not really sure. We'll have to wait and see how well the series is done. Flying across Britain, the initial figures are fantastic, but until we know what the compounded figures are, it's up to the channel then whether or not they recommission it. But from where we're looking at the moment, it's looking really, really good that they will, and I desperately want them to do a series 2. I really need them to do a series 2. I would really love to do that, and so hopefully that's what we'll be doing next summer. Now I think it'd be unrealistic to fit it in this year, obviously. So yeah, we got plenty to be getting on with at the moment, and but with media, you never really know until the week before if you've got a job. So we will see. Watch this space.
So Arthur, do you have any hobbies apart from flying?
Yeah, I love shooting, actually. Okay. I love clay pigeon shooting and game shooting. So I do, during the summer months, clays, sporting clays, and then over the winter months I might do a couple of days of driven pheasant and grouse shooting. Well, I haven't done a day's grouse shooting. I'd love to do a day's grouse shooting, but yeah, I've got a couple of days of pheasant shooting and stuff. I love doing that, and I love my swimming. Okay. Yeah, I'm big into my swimming. Always being a Marine, of course, I've always been a very good swimmer, and I love that, and formed for keeping fit and just keeping active.
So we know the Mosquito is your favourite plane. What would be your second?
Well, I have to say the Cub, because otherwise she'll tip a wing and hit me on the head. So, you can't ask me that, man. The second favourite aircraft is really tough. Really tough, because there are just so many out there, like so many different genres. I mean, you could say the Vulcan.
I'm gonna have to pin you down though.
Vulcan.
Vulcan, okay.
Vulcan next to the Mosquito, be the Vulcan, and then but tied very closely to TSR2.
Oh yeah, that's a good-looking plane, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to get on a political rant because it's all we ever hear about on aviation media, but the plane that never was, that should have been, but you know, yeah.
So, is there an aircraft you wish you could fly, realistically or not?
Ooh, right, I'm going to go for the non-realistic answer to begin with. My aeroplane that I'd love to fly, F4 Phantom.
Phantom, yeah. That's a beautiful plane, yes.
Yeah, with the power. I mean, I've got a few friends that fly for British Airways now, who cut their teeth in the RAF on the Phantom as young 20-year-olds, and the stories they tell you about it. I mean, my dad in the Navy was even with the Fleet Air Arm Phantoms on board, and he just said then, man, those guys just rocked it. You know, with those did they have Spey engines? Spey engines in the F4, and he just said that they were able to climb vertically through Mach, and you're just like, oh, the power to do that. So I'd go F4 Phantom fast jet just for the thrill of doing it, because obviously it had the slow spectrum. Yeah, get up there.
So where can we find your programs online?
So if you want to find any of the programs or the series online, you can series link it obviously throughout all of the duration that it's on. But if you want to do it on catch up, go to 4OD, 4 on demand, on the website there. You'll be able to stream and watch, download any of the programs that you like as and when you like. Yeah, that's about it. I think there's a couple of bits and bobs on YouTube, but 4OD is the place to go.
And are you on social media?
Yeah, I am. So I'm on Twitter at ArthurVW1986, and I'm on Instagram as well. And I've got my own website as well, arthur-williams.co.uk.
Well, Arthur, thanks very much for being on the show. It's much appreciated.
That's my pleasure entirely.